Hi there, this is David and welcome to 5 sequels that the developers just ruined Part 2. Here we're going to be looking at 5 great games that the developers completely ruined when they went to make a sequel. Be it through their sheer laziness or hubris, they just made it completely lose the spirit of what made the original game so successful in the first place. If you missed my first part, a link to it can be found in the video description, and let's go ahead and get started. Number 1. Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door to Super Paper Mario. Super Mario RPG is one of the best games that I've ever played, and while I understand why Nintendo couldn't continue that series, it doesn't mean that I have to be happy with the Paper Mario series taking its place. For the most part, I'm not really a huge fan of it. I just found it to be rather basic and kind of baby's first JRPG. However, I do think that Thousand-Year Door was a huge step up from the original Paper Mario. The storyline and world is much more fleshed out, the partner abilities are fun, and the amount of badges have increased like tenfold. It's really cool that Mario can literally fold into a paper airplane and fly across the map. And I really like what they did with the theme, because they could have certainly expanded upon this in the sequel, Super Paper Mario for the Wii. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case at all. Nintendo had a rare opportunity with the Wii. The console resonated with average people, not just gamers. So they could have given them a well-developed, fun JRPG to get them hooked on the genre. Instead, they took the easy way out, and they made the game into much more of a traditional side-scrolling Mario game where you alternate between 2D and 3D perspectives. Turn-based battles are gone, and there's really only some RPG elements left in the game, whatever that means. It's still fun played on its own merits, but it's not a Paper Mario game. And it really soiled my entire view of the Paper franchise. Though it still pains me whenever I think about what could have been if Nintendo and Square kept their partnership with Super Mario RPG. Number 2. Chrono Trigger to Chrono Cross. Growing up, I played all sorts of different games, from Mega Man to Kirby to Mario to Street Fighter, but RPGs were always my favorite. And my love for them was completely cemented whenever I got this masterpiece for Christmas in 1995. This may very well be my favorite game of all time. It follows a group of time travelers trying to save the world from a planet-eating parasite, and it's just so well done. Many staples that we now take for granted were introduced here also, such as on-screen encounters, a new game plus, side quests that actually matter and relate to your characters, and dual techs, where your party members combine their powers together for super powerful attacks. So, when a sequel was announced for the PlayStation, I was waiting with bated breath. I remember reading in a magazine article that it really wasn't a true sequel to Chrono Trigger, it was more of a sequel to Radical Dreamers. But that didn't deter me. I had high hopes for the Chrono franchise. However, it literally had nothing at all to do with the original game. And don't talk to me about that teeny tiny 2-minute scene tucked away at the end of a 40-hour game. It's just a slap in the face. The battle system is slow, the amount of characters that you can get are ridiculous, and the magic or element system is just stupid everybody can do everything busy work. Even the soundtrack, which is actually a highlight of the game, just ended up putting me to sleep after playing for a few hours. The entire experience was just an exercise in monotony to me. Number 3. Phantasy Star 2 to Phantasy Star 3. Phantasy Star 2 improved so much over the first game, I could really see where they were trying to go. They took inspiration from Final Fantasy and the Dragon Quest series, and then they ditched the first-person dungeons and they gave you 8 party members to mix and match with. The 3 planets are larger and everything is so much more fleshed out. That all being said though, Sega still had a large hill to climb to get the series up to par with the JRPG juggernauts offered on the Nintendo. But they were off to a good start, and if the jump in quality between the first 2 games was any indication, the third should have been amazing! And it was, just amazingly bad. Sega tried to sell everybody on their generational concept, where your party makeup changes depending on who you marry over the course of 3 generations. And all their time and energy went into this one aspect because everything else in the game is just trash. It's so lazy. Rather than improve upon Phantasy Star 2, they just got complacent. Gone are the 3 planets. Instead, you're stuck inside some biodomes with cut-and-paste towns. The battle theme is chaotic, to say the least. It's constantly switching back and forth depending on how you're doing, and the character development is just non-existent. You'll literally just wander around the world map and run into somebody and they'll be like, "Hey, can I join you?" The whole game is just sheer incompetence put on display. Number 4. Final Fantasy X to Final Fantasy X-2. I've been a huge fan of the Final Fantasy series since I played the very first one on the NES back in 3rd grade. With Final Fantasy IX's return to form on the PlayStation, I was hopeful that their PlayStation 2 outing would follow along the same path. Unfortunately, it didn't, and I'm not going to sit here and say that Final Fantasy X is the best thing since sliced bread, because I definitely have my own list of problems with it. From the complete linearity of it all, to the blitzball ridiculousness, to the mortal sin of having to switch in all 7 characters for every single frickin' battle just for them to get experience. Despite those issues though, it's a cute tropical jaunt, and I was pretty excited for their open-world, female-led, job class-based sequel. But whenever I turned it on, all I could say within the first 5 minutes was, "What in the world were they thinking with this hot pile of garbage?" I think that they leaned too much on the girl group saves the world thing, rather than the whole, "Hey, let's actually make a good game" thing. Opening up with that concert was just such a huge cringe fest, and it was downright embarrassing watching Yuna dance around with Brother all the time. It was just one dumb thing after another. Now, I will give credit where credit is due, and I love a good job system. And I liked the dress spheres, they were cool, but the rest of the game was just such a nightmare. Spirit is completely recycled from the ground up, and in order to get everything, including the best ending, you really have to go back and forth over it 5 different times. Like, my god, who has time for that? In what alternate reality did they think that anybody would find that fun? It's just a long, embarrassing slog from beginning to end. And finally, number 5, Tales of Symphonia to Tales of Symphonia Dawn of the New World. This is the game that propelled this franchise into the mainstream. The reasons are twofold. One was that it was released on the JRPG-starved GameCube, and 2 is that it's just that good. The world is split into 2. There's the waning world of Silverant, and on the flip side of the same coin is the advanced world of Tethe'ala. Driving the plot forward is the notion that both worlds are kind of caught up in a strange yin and yang, where they compete for the same supply of mana. So while one is thriving, the other one is in decline. It's a pretty neat concept, and once Lloyd rejoins the 2 worlds together, it sets the events of the sequel, Dawn of the New World, into motion. Unfortunately, this is a story that shouldn't have been told. At its core, it's a cheap Pokemon ripoff with very unlikable characters and a downright stupid storyline. They could have done so much with the newly merged worlds, as well as the climatic, cultural, and political implications that all of this had. But instead, they chose to focus on some whiny weakling that nobody cares about and his lovesick harpy that follows him around like a puppy. It's ridiculous. They really could have went someplace impactful and told a gripping story about racial relations and harmony, but instead they just shit all over everything. Also, why didn't they build a decent game using the assets that they already had? Kinda like Final Fantasy X-2 did. They were just lazy with a point-and-click world map and awful monster capturing. It does seem like they learned their lesson though, because the other Tales sequel, Xillia 2, was so much better done. Well, that's it for the 5 sequels that the developers ruined Part 2. Be sure to watch the first part if you haven't already, and if you like this video and what I do here on the channel, please consider supporting me on Patreon for early access and exclusive content. The link to it can be found in the video description. This has been David. If you like this, please like, comment, and subscribe, and have a good day.